that lends a lot of credibility. If you come in and can be upfront and honest and say, actually in this application, I think this product over here that I don't represent would be better for you. That all of a sudden now you become a trusted advisor rather than a salesman.
And I often say that we have all the requirements of space, right? Because it has to go underground and send us data from miles and miles away, and it has to work. Like, failure is not an option.
We'll put on, a standard mule shoe. Ours is slightly different just for that, but it's, everybody's got one.
The top drive and the drawworks really don't care whether the electrons coming at it are from a joystick or a PLC.
The panel, what you see here on the left, which is now controlled by one of my students, is showing you actually the control of our brakes.
As of now, geothermal is a pretty small market.
If you have tortuosity, the casing will be up against the side on part of the well. There won't be any cement there. The cement will have crested around it.
So managed pressure drilling, it's been defined as a process to precisely control the pressure profile in the wellbore.
The key is being transparent with our clients in this case. So tell them what happened. If we had a failure, tell them exactly what happened. Whether it's our fault, whether it's whatever the issue was, we need to be transparent.
I think it's very important for everyone in the industry to know what's out there and kind of what's happening downhole as well.
I've probably worked on over 40 different performance limiters in my career. If I miss any of those, and the computer is raising weight on bit, and I miss any of those, I have a train wreck. The computer's going in the ocean.
Here's your new colors, here's your new thing. We don't do that
at all. Here's the tattoo you need to get.
Yeah, here's the tattoo. Sorry about the last one. We used to fake that all the time.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is the Vidor Locksmith Show. I am your host, David Gibson, where we are unlocking the secrets to success in the oil and gas industry. One interview, one technical presentation, and definitely one technical screw up on my part at a time. So happy to have everybody here with us this week. I am on pseudo vacation, broadcasting live to you guys from Cloudcroft, New Mexico, right here at the edge of the Lincoln National Forest. Absolutely beautiful day here. I plan on totally getting the sunburn while I'm out here broadcasting to you guys, because essentially that's what I did last year. But this time I did put on a little bit of sunscreen. If you guys do remember, last year we had David Ramson Wood on, and we went over financial. I can't even remember what we titled it, but it was like financial nonsense of oil and gas companies. It was an absolutely amazing episode, absolutely a barn burner. We got tons and tons of feedback from it. If you have not, and if you are interested in being able to learn more about how the finances of specifically of publicly traded oil and gas companies, go back and check out that episode. There's links on my LinkedIn page, so go ahead and check that out. Anyways, other news, we've got the Managed Pressure Drilling event coming up on June 16th. All right, we've already got over, I think, 9,500 people signed up. So if you have any interest in learning more about managed pressure drilling, what's available in the market, who the players are, and what the future of it is, be sure to sign up and tune in for that event, June 16th, 9 a.m. It's going to be an absolutely amazing one. Really looking forward to that. And thank you to all the sponsors who are taking part and all of the operators who are taking part as well. So yeah, we're going to have an absolutely amazing episode today. Really excited about this, to be able to broaden my horizons and start learning about some more stuff. So as per normal, guys, let me find my mouse here, because I'm trying to do this. A lot of glare going on right now. So guys, let me know where you guys are watching from. Let me know if this is your first episode that you've tuned in for. And then as always, please ask questions. That's the whole point of us being able to do this, is to be able to interact live with you, the audience. It's the reason why I don't do a podcast, because we can't interact with you guys. I want to be able to give you guys out there that are watching the opportunity to be able to ask questions and get get direct feedback from some of the experts that we're able to bring onto the show. All right, so let's see here. See if I can find all of the buttons here. Right there we go. Matt Hunt says, "Morning, Gibson." Thank you. Somebody says, "Loading." Sure. Yeah. Andrew Richard, good morning, everyone. Andrew's been tuning in the past couple of weeks, and thank you. Appreciate you for being here. Good friend, Tony Morrow. If you guys are any bit interested in project management, be sure to link up with Tony on LinkedIn. It's a great guy for that. Awesome. We've got LinkedIn user, as always, the biggest fan of the show, tuning in from Midland this week. And then the other LinkedIn user in Farmington, New Mexico. So somebody here in the state with me. Matt says he's tuning in from India. Joe's tuning in from Pennsylvania. Future former home of Cabot Oil and Gas. And Joe, some of you don't know this yet, but he's going to be on the show next week. So he's our guest next week. And really excited about having him on. Wealth of expertise, wealth of knowledge, and he's been putting out some absolutely amazing videos on LinkedIn. So y'all be sure to go and check them out. Right. David Gonzalez says he's tuning in from Venezuela. Thank you for being here, sir. Mohammed says hi, everybody from Ghana. There we go. Andrew Coyle, beauty location, great place to ski with the family. If I only knew how to ski. Oh, scrolled way too far. Ari says, nice setup and atmosphere around your pseudo vacation. Thanks for tuning in from Dubai this morning. Armin tuning in. Thank you for being here, sir. Mario says, good morning to all. Salim, former panelist. So when we did the Rotary Steerable event, we've got John tuning in from Calgary. Thanks for being here, sir. Carlos says, good morning. Oh, he's talking to Armin. Sorry. Well, then let those guys talk to each other. Andy McDonald says, hello from Scotland. Thanks for being here, sir. Carlos tuning in from Houston. It's hard to read these guys. Laura's waving from Colombia. Good morning to you as well. Whoa, from Singapore. I bet it's late there. Somebody's got a late night. Clinton Moss, hello from Woodlands. Thanks for being here, sir. We need to get Clinton on the show. Evening from India. Blake says hello from the Woodlands. Somebody saying hi to Clinton in the Woodlands as well. Then Larry Neely Robertson, Illinois. Sorry, guys, this is really hard to read. Usually I can go through this a lot quicker. Plus, I'm having to use the little trackpad. Andrew from Oxford, England. Juan from India. Let's see, Andrew Richard. Hello from Calgary. Ivan's in tuning in from Argentina. Wow, we've definitely got a worldwide audience today. India said, be there at the end of June. Well, be sure to come on out. Dave says, looking forward to seeing the show with Joe, with David Gibson. David, enjoy your vacation. Quit working so hard. It is very difficult to stop working so hard. But I will say this. I did have to take a break yesterday because I ate it's like a cinnamon roll, but it's more of like a savory cinnamon roll that had like green chilies, cheese, and bacon on it. Plus, then I had a giant cinnamon roll. And then I went and had some Mad Jack's barbecue. And we purchased about $86 worth of barbecue. And we probably ate like $3 worth of it. I was absolutely stuffed yesterday. I had to take a very long nap at one point in time. So if there's anybody that was trying to get a hold of me at that point in time, that's the reason why. Sorry, guys. I was being lazy. All right. And then Leroy, thank you so much for being here. Leroy, if you guys have not, be sure to connect with him on LinkedIn. This guy is super active, great positive attitude, always, and being very interactive with a lot of the different conversations that have going on LinkedIn. All right. Enough of my yammering. I am, absolutely beside myself with being able to have this person be able to come on our show and share their expertise and knowledge. Absolutely a leader as I see it in our industry, and look forward to always hearing whatever she has to say. This is, hold on, let me get it right. Sorry, it's not the best. All right, this is your Minute with Andrea Switzer. Boop.
Good morning. It's so great to see you guys today. So excited for this weekend. If you can see this diagram behind me, I'm going scuba diving, so I'm pretty pumped. I love hiking Cloudcroft too. Today's message is about keeping it simple. Sometimes in drilling operations, we make things a little complicated, and I challenge you to make it simple. I've done this with how to report a relative wellbore position with respect to the plan. In U.S. shale basins, while drilling a horizontal well, a drilling engineer is typically given a drilling window or an allowable distance away from a plan line to still achieve the target objectives of the well. I have found that reporting this relative distance from the wellbore can run the gamut. Hopefully it's an above or below the line. Maybe it's a difference in TBD, but I've seen it be so complicated, and it really doesn't have to be so. Imagine drilling the wellbore as a straight line. Use a simple point slope formula with different target points, and that can allow you to determine where you are. So what I did is I created a spreadsheet, got everyone on the same page, simple spreadsheet. Got everyone on the same page, MWD, directional driller, accompaniment, to be able to report where that wellbore was with respect to the plan, so that we had knowledge so that we could make a plan forward. So I invite you and your operations to find a challenging or complicated situation and make it simple, and you will see your operational efficiency improve. And with that, have a great Memorial Day weekend, and a quick shout out to everyone who has reached out to me, given words of wisdom and encouragement from the show. Thank you so, so much for your support. It means so much to me. And with that, back to David.
And that was your minute with Andrea Switzer. Andrea, thank you so much for being a part of the show. And now she's actually, she says she's just going to leave because she's got to go do other things. So she's making me fly solo on her show, or on Keith's show. I mean, somebody else's show. It's definitely not my show. So thank you, Andrea, for being here for that. And there's lots of words of wisdom with that. And yeah, for anybody that is watching, please reach out to Andrea, connect with her on LinkedIn. It's always nice to be able to give people support. And any of the other guests or other people that we've had on the show before, please be sure to reach out to them. These are people that are willing to be able to share their expertise, share their knowledge, and be able to push the industry forward. These are good people in our industry, so be sure to connect with them. All right, we're going to do one more thing before we bring on our guest of the day. So, all right, let me start collecting comments. All right, guys, it's time to give something away. Ooh, no, this isn't mine to give away. I can't do that. Okay, sorry. I was going to give away the little Magix cup, but that's not mine, so I can't do that. All right, we'll just give away one of the drill bits. You guys have seen them before. All you got to do is in the comment section type #Gibson. Let me see if I can find it. If I still have it on this computer, I do. There you go. All you got to do is write #Gibson. It is case sensitive. So, and you only need to do it one time. I think Baggio, who usually tunes in from India, does it several times, but you only have to do it one time. The only way you could double enter is if you do it on LinkedIn and on YouTube and on Facebook. So actually you could do 3 entries, but go ahead and do that. And let's see if we're actually getting any entries in. Actually, I could probably take this off my face first. You know what? This is touchscreen, so I could just do that. All right, let's see here. We've got 6 entries so far, 7 entries, 8 entries. All right, guys, let's at least get it up over 20. I know it's a challenging task to be able to fingers to your keyboard sometimes, but I believe you guys can do it. All right, we're giving away one of the drill bits. I do appreciate it. So if you are if you're somebody who would want to be able to sponsor the show, right, we could easily, instead of it being #Gibson, we could make it #United, #XYZ Directional Company, or #Madjax, whatever, right? All of that is possible. So if you're interested in being able to do that and link up with the show, let me know. If you enjoy the show, let me know. You don't even have to sponsor it. Just kind of do some of that stuff. All right. I didn't share my screen before the show because I totally forgot. So now I need to be able to bring this up. This is completely unprofessional on my side. I apologize, everybody. Chrome tab, giveaway tool. There we go. Share that one. All right. Yep. And then all I got to do is add to stream. Let's see. How many we got? 23 so far. So, all right. Yeah, we're up over 20, which is my magical number to be able to hit. Thanks for everybody adding theirs in. Definitely got to look at this later and see if everybody's, because it looks like we're getting way more than 20, but that's all that the site is registering. Not really sure why that's working like that. I will look into it later. I'll do some feedback with the StreamYard team. So, all right, let's go ahead and do the giveaway. All right, let's see who's going to get it. All right, sorry. Trying to do all of this from one screen is also difficult. Not having my... All right, I got to stop making excuses and just start making stuff happen. I almost said a curse word. All right. And the winner for this week is going to be... Drum roll. Am I shipping something internationally? Raheem, you are the winner for this week. Thank you, sir, for participating and for watching the show. I do appreciate it. Send me a LinkedIn message after this with your contact information, and then I will be sure to be able to get that out to you. All right. So remove that one. All right. So our guest of the day is the absolutely amazing reservoir engineer, somebody who's got an amazing YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out, you need to go take a look. And as well, got married in front of a pump jack. I mean, how much more oil filled can you be, right? She is absolutely amazing, and she is here to teach you the 5 things she wish she knew about unconventional reservoir engineering. Our guest of the day is Yogashri Pradhan. Yogashri, thank you so much for being here. We do appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a wonderful opportunity, and as usual, I always enjoy your show.
Oh, you like the show? Thank you so much.
Yes, I do.
You don't have to lie to everybody. All right. For those who don't know who you are, can you give us a little background on who you are and how you got to where you are in the industry today?
Sure. A little bit about myself. I currently work as a senior reservoir engineer for Endeavor Energy Resources. My previous lives have been in university lands and in Devon Energy. When I graduated from university, it was at UT, and I got a job at Devon Energy working as a field engineer in the Midland Basin. And when I was working in the Midland Basin, I gained a lot of field experience. As I was getting that field experience, and as 2016 rolled along, I moved back to Houston to look for other opportunities. And that's when I landed with University Lands. University Lands, if you don't know what that organization is, it's an organization that leased out 2.1 million acres out in the Permian Basin, so Midland and Delaware basins. And there's over 280 operators that produce out of these lands, and royalties support UT and Texas A&M school systems. So I was a production engineer working for University Lands, doing look-back studies in production and in reservoir engineering. And then as oil prices came back up back in 2018, I wanted to take advantage of working for an oil and gas company in Midland. I wanted to move back to Midland. And I found Endeavor Energy Resources in the gate. I had the privilege of working with them as a reservoir engineer. So that's a little bit about myself and my journey. As I got my bachelor's degree in petroleum engineering from UT, while I was working, I got a master's in petroleum engineering from Texas A&M University, and last year I graduated with that degree. So that's been a wonderful experience, especially applying it to the workplace as well. As far as my start in engineering, ever since I was a little girl, my parents knew that I was good at math and science, so they provided toys for me in math and science to better those skills. I ended up going to a camp called Grade Camp in the University of Houston, and I learned a lot about what it takes to be an engineer and that women can be engineers. So I knew I wanted to be an engineer of some sort. And they also had petroleum engineering. As people came, and there were people from all sorts of industries, and there were those from the oil and gas industry that shared their experiences at that Grade Camp. And I wanted to, and I knew that I wanted to do petroleum engineering at that time. And I was also a part of a gifted and talented mentorship program, not the AP and honors classes, but you get to be a part of a program where you write a research paper of a topic of interest in a career that you want to pursue, and then you look for internship opportunities. So I was a part of a select program and I wrote a paper on CO2 flooding. After a cold call and cold emailing people, there was one mentor that responded to me, and that was my first mentor in the oil and gas industry. And he provided me an internship opportunity before entering university. So that's how I got my start in the oil and gas industry. And he also introduced me to the Society of Petroleum Engineers, or SPE. So I've been an active SPE member for over 10 years now, and I got my start before entering university. So that's a little bit about myself as far as career trajectory and how I even got my start in petroleum engineering.
Wow, the number of amazing steps that just kind of fell into place there. I shouldn't say fell into place, but your parents were active in being able to, make sure that they were doing what they need to be able to help you with your skill set. And then you were looking for internships and taking part in a lot of things. What advice would you have then for, other, either young students or college students or people that are just starting their careers, because that's definitely an area where you don't see as many people being active in SPE or in industry associations and stuff.
As far as advice that I give to young people, getting involved in a professional society as soon as possible is what helped me, because people tend to underestimate the influence of networking. And especially, and I don't like to stereotype engineers, but engineers are known not to be the best networkers, but that can obviously change with professional societies. And understanding the influence of networking was something that helped me, because I was able to get a lot of mentors through SPE, and I was able to get a lot of advice from people that I've just met. It's a game of choose your own adventure, where there's people from the industry that can tell you what you can do, and you either take that advice or not take that advice, and then you go to the next step, or you go to a certain page in your career. So joining a professional society, and for those who are still in school, I would say be sure to be close with the people that you're classmates with, because you never know who you're going to meet in the industry that ended up taking the same class and ended up commiserating with you with the same course that you were taking at university. And that's another form of networking as well. And keeping in touch with your professors, because the way that I ended up getting my university lands opportunity was contacting a professor from university, and she gave me a business card that led me to the next opportunity, or that led me to my next contact that could give me my next opportunity. So staying in touch with staying in touch with your alumni network and also with your classmates are pieces of advice that I would give for those that are for those that are in that state of, especially if they're about to be young professionals, and definitely being involved in your professional society. I would say that's helped me the most.
All right, so now we've given some advice to the up and coming engineers and some of the students and stuff. Now let's get into what we're going to talk about today. What is your advice for somebody who is getting into reservoir engineering? And then obviously for the title of today's show, what are the 5 things that you wish you knew prior to becoming a reservoir engineer yourself?
Sure. I'd like to start out with an overall theme. And before we do that, if you can go ahead and share my screen, David.
Yeah, I'm trying to find my mouse right now. There it is. Okay.
The overall theme that I wanted to provide to everybody is that whatever I learned in reservoir engineering, or I wish that I learned in reservoir engineering, was obviously not taught in school, or not the emphasis in school. So that's what I wanted to start out with. And most of the stuff that I learned has been on the job. And I hope that those of you who can relate, if you are a fellow reservoir engineer like myself, or those of you who want to get into reservoir engineering, you can take some of these learnings and apply it however you may choose, whether you are in unconventionals or in conventional reservoir engineering. So a lot of these are my own personal thoughts, and that I've gotten from my 6 years of experience. So I'll go ahead and get started on the 5 things that I wish they taught me in unconventional reservoir engineering. First, I want to clarify, who is they? Everybody has a different they in their mind, but I wanted to be transparent in who I think my they is whenever I think about what I wish they taught me in unconventional reservoir engineering. So I'm coming from the perspective of school, not to say that I'm blaming school for anything, but most of my curriculum from my experience was focused on conventional reservoir engineering. And it was focused on how to think in terms of conventional reservoir engineering problems. And I want to make sure that those of you who are listening on the call or in the show, that you might be working in conventional reservoir engineering, and it's definitely very important, and it serves a purpose. I bring this up because my career trajectory just happened to be mostly in unconventional reservoir engineering. And there were a lot of things that I had to learn on the job or in the industry on how to improve my skills in unconventional reservoir engineering that I didn't necessarily learn from school. So that's what I also wanted to mention, that everything that I've learned has been on the job and through my experiences as a reservoir engineer, as a mid-career professional. The first thing I wanted to mention is something a little bit that's non-unique, And David already mentioned this with another person that's on the show, or that's listening on the show today. But I want to talk about the importance of project management. I mentioned this because, again, it's non-unique to conventional or unconventional reservoirs. But I want to stress that this is very important to mention because this is something that I had to learn on the job. And reservoir engineering is not something that you can just silo and do and exert your skills on your own. It's requiring inputs from all disciplines, such as you need to talk to your geologist on where exactly you want to land your well. You need to speak to land to figure out where exactly can you drill, where do we have rights. You need to talk to drilling in terms of if you're developing a field, what is possible from a drilling standpoint. You need to talk to your production engineer. How can we best produce these wells? You need to talk to your completions engineer. What's the best way to complete these wells in order to maximize the reservoir performance? And those are all the things that I have to mention as far as project management. And as a reservoir engineer, you'll find yourself being the project manager, especially if you worked on the development piece of it. So it requires an immense amount of leadership skills and coordination with different teammates in order for you to excel in your job. And considering that unconventionals it has been unknown for quite some time, and my generation is going to be one of the experts in unconventional reservoir engineering, the project management aspect is something that you cannot forget. And as I mentioned, it requires extensive planning and how to develop an entire field to get the most optimal value. And you also need to take into account primary infill interactions, which is something that I'll mention a little bit more later on in this presentation on some of the things I wish I knew about unconventional reservoir engineering. So I want to stress the importance of project management. And I want to mention why, for those of you that, this is mostly for those that are about to enter into the workforce and those that are about a year into your work experience, and you learn a little bit about what your job function is or getting to know what your job function is, just to give you what a long-term vision is in terms of project management in unconventional reservoir engineering. You need to have strategic alignment with your team. I told you about the immense amount of leadership skills you'll need because as a reservoir engineer, you're most likely going to be the project manager when it comes to development planning in unconventionals. You have clear focus and objectives, realistic project planning, quality control, risk management. You need continuous oversight. You need subject matter expertise that's coming from yourself and how to develop a field as well as with others. And you need to manage and learn from successes and failures. Because let's face it, there's a lot of unknowns that we have in unconventionals. And learning from our successes as much as you learn from your failures is very critical, and project management sets the foundation for that. Okay, let's see if I'm trying to change my slide. Okay, now it's moving.
Yeah.
The next, great. The next thing I want to talk about is this should be gone with, this is known without being said, but how much time as a reservoir engineer I spend on data manipulation. Then again, this may not be unique to unconventionals, but there's a lot of data that we're gathering in unconventional reservoir engineering. And I found this study from data scientists. And even though engineers and data scientists are not necessarily the same, we can use those superpowers, or we tend to learn those superpowers as engineers on the job. So data scientists spend about 45% of their time on data prep tasks, including loading and cleaning the data. So this is from a study from Anaconda on the 2020 state of data science, moving from hype towards maturity. And you'll notice that data loading and data cleansing are the two biggest things that engineers today are still dealing with in terms of before they reach the analysis. And I want to read something that Anaconda has stated, that our study indicates that there are gaps between what enterprises need and what institutions teach. Two of the most frequently cited skills gaps along the respondents in working in enterprise environments: big data management, which is 30% of respondents, and engineering skills, which is 26% respondents. And they do not rank in the top 10 skills offered in university programs. So this came from a report of over 2,400 respondents And this is where, and this is what the data suggests, or this is what the results suggest, that I spend a lot of time with data manipulation and in my day-to-day job, and before I reach to the analysis. And just letting you know that the data mining skills that you all are going to need before you're going to come to the industry is necessary. And trust me, there are a lot of positions for you out there in terms of how to make that data loading and data cleansing process much easier. And there are opportunities out there to fill those roles. So for those of you that are looking for positions, that's definitely a gap that you may need that you can fill. So spending most of your time on data manipulation is what I would suggest is what is something that I wish they taught me in unconventional reservoir engineering.
I can attest to this, is that's how my whole company is built, is data gathering, data mining, data manipulation, data visualization. It's like the first 2/3 of that is like the entire company is what we do. So I 100% agree with what you just said, that it is a very, very important skill set to be able to learn, or at least just to be able to know that is going to take place.
I agree. Thank you so much for that. I wanted to show this chart that I also got from the same source. I wrote the source down there if you want to check out the website in a little bit more detail. But here's
hold on, just a second. On your screen, it says stop sharing or hide. Click the hide because it's covering up the. There we go. Now we can see. All right, good.
Perfect. Well, here's a website that gives you a little bit more detail. If you want to go ahead and find it, take a screenshot, just go for it. So the right or the left chart says what students learn. And here's all the skills of what students learn, either by themselves or through school. You have Python, machine learning, data visualization, probability and statistics, and deep learning. And here's something that universities offer, which is closely aligned to what students are learning. And then the last part is what enterprises lack. There's big data management. There's advanced mathematics. Not saying that everyone should get a PhD in math, but I mean, there's advanced mathematics that's involved. There's deep learning, engineering skills, and machine learning. There needs to be integration with your data scientists and with your engineers every single day. Or, like I said, as engineers, you can develop your superpowers in data science and apply your engineering skills with data science to fill those gaps of that data loading and data cleansing. So I would say what I wish they taught me, and that would save a lot of my time today, is saving time on data manipulation. The third thing I want to talk about is unconventionals, and this is something that I learned only a couple years ago, and that changed my perspective in unconventional reservoir engineering, is that when you look at these basins and unconventionals, they're statistical plays. I got this straight off of the SP Monograph 3. For those of you who want to look at some literature in Society of Petroleum Engineers or Society of Petroleum Evaluation Engineers, there are a series of monographs that you can get to get a better understanding of unconventional reservoirs or how to evaluate your unconventional plays. And I wanted to mention that unconventionals are statistical plays. This chart on the left just represents how your well count is essential, how your well count is essential to tightening your P10 and P90 gap. The proved aggregation factor is your aggregates of wells and your proved and what's been proven from that with your percentage of confidence. So with the 90% percentage of confidence and knowing what your P10 to P90 or your statistical spread is, you can figure out what's the amount of well count that you need. And the biggest takeaway from this chart over here is that the tighter your P10 to P90 ratio is, the lower your well count is needed, the more homogeneous your population is in terms of how your wells are going to perform. The chart on the right I wanted to show is that in terms of well performance, it's a statistical distribution. Some wells are going to perform above the mean, some wells are going to perform below the mean. And you can't base your success of a field development off of one well, because it's going to fall somewhere in the distribution. and you don't happen to know where that distribution is going to be. At the same time, if you produce a P10 well, that doesn't necessarily mean all the wells you're going to produce are P10 wells. It just happened to be that you fall in that distribution for that time being. So it's very important to note that in unconventional wells, and I'm not saying that you don't need to focus on the physics at all. You definitely need to focus on the physics. But as with the perspective in unconventionals that I want to provide to everyone is that it's statistical play, that it is a statistics game, that based on your completion metrics, based on your geology metrics, based on your production metrics, you're going to fall in a certain distribution, and that's been the way that we've learned about unconventional reservoirs for the past 10 years. I do want to mention about what the anchor wells meant in terms of understanding this distribution, is that these are wells randomly selected from a geologic subset, which become the anchor points for future statistical comparison. So this was just to be consistent in a certain area to show that even in a certain geological subset, or you're homogenizing the area to be consistent in a parameter or to control a parameter, you're still going to have a range of results from your unconventional wells. The next thing that I wish that I learned in unconventional reservoir engineering is how well performant truly acts. If everyone remembers in their reservoir engineering classes, when you've taken your first semester of reservoir engineering, you'll learn that there's 3 types of declines. You have an exponential, you have a hyperbolic, and you have a harmonic. But the ranges of the B factors are the B factor doesn't exceed 1. There is a noticeable period in unconventional reservoirs where the B factors exceed 1. And the way that we forecast these reservoirs is that we assume a constant B factor of more than 1 throughout the life of the well. I do want to mention that with the ever-changing flow regimes in your particular wells and unconventionals, your B factors are going to change over time with respect to the flow regime. That's something that I do want to mention to everybody. So having a multi-segment decline curve when forecasting your wells is very important. And another diagnostic that is very common in unconventional reservoir engineering, so this is for those that have had most of their careers in conventional reservoirs or who haven't had exposure to reservoir engineering or unconventional reservoir engineering, is that rate transient analysis is a common reservoir diagnostic in unconventional reservoir engineering to determine completion quality and reservoir performance. Now, that's a brief introduction of rate transient analysis. What I mean to say is you're looking at production and you're looking at pressures and you're creating diagnostic plots out of those pressures and production to look at how exactly is the well performing and what flow regime that well is. I have a couple charts here from Kappa Engineering I got from their booklets. And I wanted to show you that in the first month, when you have fracture flow or fractures contributing to the majority of your flow, and you have linear flow, that is where your B factor can exceed 1. But when you reach that boundary dominated flow, for instance, after a certain period of time, which can be after several months or so, that's when your B factor changes or your B factor declines. And that's where you need to start having a different segment in your forecasting. And in conventional reservoir engineering, what I learned in school at least is that you can put a certain B factor throughout the life of the well, or you can assume a certain B factor throughout the life of the well. But in unconventionals, it's a little bit different because of the noticeable period of how wells perform, especially the fact that there have been a transient flow. And I still think that we're still understanding how unconventional reservoir performance goes, because some of our oldest wells are actually for gas reservoirs like the Barnett, they're over 10 years old. So a lot of the references of how wells are performing for the long term are coming from data points that are 10 years old. But some of the liquid-rich reservoirs, such as the Midland and Delaware basins that we're looking at, some of the oldest wells that we're looking at are about 5 to 7 years old. So there's a lot of learning that we need to have in how the well performance truly acts. And there's a lot of assumptions that are made in decline curve analysis, for instance, that are not always applicable to unconventional reservoirs. So that's been a gap that is something that I had to close whenever I had to learn on the job of unconventional reservoir engineering. And the last thing I want to mention as the fifth part, and I promise to have one slide because this alone can be its presentation. And I'm sure you'll have someone else on the show, David, that can go much more into detail on the subject. But it's fracture-driven interactions. And if you contact me on LinkedIn or if you reach out to me on my social media platforms, I'm more than happy to share with you papers that I've been a part of that describe fracture-driven interactions, or even papers that are from the industry that talk about fracture-driven interactions. What exactly are these FDIs, or fracture-driven interactions? They've been commonly known as a negative connotation as frac hit or frac bashing. And fracture-driven interactions are how to quantify the questions that we're trying to answer, are how to quantify well-to-well communication and fluid migration between wells with well performance. The questions to consider with fracture-driven interactions: what's the best method to mitigate these FDIs? How long does the primary well take to recover from pre-Shannon declines? Will the primary well reach pre-Shannon declines? How do you keep the infill well fractures in your wellbore? A lot of these concepts that I mentioned right now, and especially for those of you that are about to enter the unconventional reservoir engineering world, it might be a little bit too abstract. But these are questions that I think you all should keep in mind whenever you're going to work on an asset for when analyzing well performance. It's not just the one well that's going to perform. It's also the entire field that you need to develop and the sequence of that field development as well. And the other thing that I want to mention with fracture-driven interactions, what technologies are you going to use to monitor those fracture-driven interactions? What data do you need to collect? This is a complex problem that, again, requires integration, not just with the reservoir engineers, but also with completions, geology, and in production. But had I learned about frac bashing or frac hits in school, I would have been much farther ahead than I am right now in terms of understanding these fracture-driven interactions. But again, a lot of things that you learn are going to be on the job, and a lot of things that you learn or the situations that you come across are not always going to be simulated in school. They're things that you just learn for the first time that's on the job, and you need to learn how to mitigate that, or how to minimize negative outcomes is a common term that we use around the shop that I work in. So fracture-driven interactions is something that you definitely need to keep in mind, and I'm more than happy to answer questions in terms of FDIs and what I've seen in terms of FDIs and well-to-well communication and well performance. But that was the last thing that I wanted to mention, and that this subject alone may open up another can of worms, but I do want to leave it at that as far as the fifth thing that I wish that I learned in unconventional reservoir engineering. And again, this can be its own presentation, but I want to leave it at that. And that's everything that I wanted to share with you all on the 5 things that I wish that wish they taught me in unconventional reservoir engineering.
So let me ask you this: had you been taught these things prior to being able to go into unconventional reservoir engineering, is that still a course that a life choice that you still would have wanted to make?
That's a really good question. I would say that I would have been intimidated by that, just because wow, there are a lot of economic implications that come with fracture-driven interactions. But I think I have gotten an appreciation of how complex the problem is. I like taking challenges. That's my personality.
So let me ask you this. You said earlier that we're looking at some of the unconventional data that's coming in. Barnett, you say it was like 10 years out. Some more of the liquid-driven basins are 5, 6, maybe 7 years at most. How does it feel for you to be essentially at the leading edge and to be one of the more senior people in this field because it is so new, how does that feel for you, since like, you know, there can't be like a 30-year expert at this, you know?
I mean, we have 30-year experts that talk about the fundamentals of well-to-well interactions, or the fundamentals in completion engineering. And I still think those fundamentals are important, but it feels great to be one of the first set of eyes to look at a complex problem like this. And as I mentioned, I think it's very exciting. It's something that I do appreciate. But I also want to mention that just because that this is a new problem that we're experiencing, or this has been a problem, it's a more recent problem compared to the past, that isn't to say to throw your old textbooks away at all. We still need to look at some of those textbooks or some of those fundamentals. We just have to apply them a little bit differently.
So one more question, and then we'll start taking it. So anybody out there that's watching, if you guys want to, be sure to throw out your questions in the comment section. We'll get them queued up and put on here. I've got one more question myself that I'm really curious about. Obviously, completions and fracking techniques have changed very rapidly in the last 10 years. You know, if we say the starting points, you know, Barnett Shale here in the U.S. To where we are today, are there any wells that you're coming across, looking at them and seeing the older completion styles and saying, you know, these wells might be a candidate for us to go back and recomplete with new technology, and then, you know, after doing all of the analysis, then they'll be a more profitable well for the longer term?
That's a really good question. There's been quite a few studies in the Midland Basin on the importance of refracs, or the economic uplift of refracs. I do see there is a viability of that in the future. I just think it really does depend on where it really does depend on where a company and organization's priorities are, whether if it is developing the rest of unexploited acreage versus going back and recompleting old completions. If you have a lot of acreage, for example, you're going to focus on that the field development for newer wells and try to get the most value out of those newer wells in unexploited areas. If you're in an area that's majority HBP, then yes, going back and recompleting those wells with newer technologies is definitely viable.
What did you say? HPP? HBP?
HBP, held by production.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you have most of your acreage that is held by production and you want to improve the economics of that asset, then yes, going back and recompleting those wells is definitely a viable option. The only thing I do want to mention is the economics of recompletion. Newer technologies also come with more expenses. So predicting what kind of uplift you will need for a particular well and balancing that if you're going to get that uplift with the technology that you're going to apply is definitely something that professionals need to or engineers need to consider. So I would say it's viable. It's definitely, but it's a case by case basis as far as can you promise the uplift that you're going to get with the technology that you're going to apply.
All right. Well, that was the last of my, being selfish and asking my questions first. Right. All right. So Armin asks, how often do drilling and completions and reservoir teams meet for field development plans?
That's a really great question. From my experience, it's been weekly. There are weekly meetings, and sometimes the frequency can be as much as daily. And it depends on what shop you're in. That's what I want to mention. But I've been very fortunate to be in a shop where I see those meetings almost every other day, or at least once a week.
So how big of an impact does what drilling does on a daily basis have an effect on the reservoir engineering team?
That's a really great question. So the way that it works in terms of where drilling engineers need to drill is how exactly the well construction is going to happen. You're going to look at a group of wells, and you're going to look at how much these wells are going to step out in terms of your field development to honor the spacing that the reservoir engineer has recommended. So questions that you're trying to answer are, what's going to be the step out? And if there's going to be a step out, is there going to be a certain decline that you need to put with that large amount of step out for engineering? And and the other thing I can mention is, and I'm going to jump around in terms of answers here, but another topic is geosteering. And when you're going at how much in structure are you going to drill or how much in structure are you going to drill your wells? And is the well construction specifically optimal to produce to produce from the reservoir? Are you staying in structure as best as you can? Are you keeping your wellbore as straight as you can to reduce any liquid holdup or to reduce any friction pressure losses for your particular well, to maintain a 1-to-1 correlation when you increase your lateral length and get the respective recovery? So geosteering has a lot to do with it. Dealing with your step outs with drilling engineers has a lot to do with it. So well construction definitely plays a vital role into predicting the performance of your wells.
All right, so we got, I'm just about to click one. All right, here we go. So from Koshi says, does FDIs represent one of the most costly aspects of completions?
That's a really great question. That is something that we're still trying to figure out as an industry, because we understand that there is well-to-well communication. We understand that there is fluid migration happening. But what we've yet to understand is how to quantify the economic implications of those FDIs. And some of that is going to take some long-term results from that well performance. And some of the metrics that can be used can be as early as not just the IP, but how much water is that particular well producing? And is that going to affect my additional disposal costs? So there are metrics that can be very costly. And I would say it's the most popular completion cost, as opposed to maybe the most expensive one, because we've yet to quantify FDIs and the economic implications. We've still yet to quantify those.
There we go. All right, now Brian says, how long does a lesson learned on a pad take to be applied to the design of a new pad?
That's a really great question as well. Depends how fast you go.
We're asking all the good ones today.
Yes, it depends how fast you go. That's what I want to say, because it depends on how active you are as a company. So from my experience, from what I've seen, with the pad and alerting and your application to the new pad can take up to a year, and that's a year at the fastest. And that's based on if you've improved your activity. But I would also say that you can learn a lot of things on the fly with a current pad that you can apply with the new pad that you're about to develop. So it depends on what you want to learn from a particular pad versus how fast your activity is. I would say a year if you want to look at well performance, but I would also say as quickly as even a couple of weeks, if depending on some of the drilling metrics that you learn on one pad and you can learn that on another pad.
Excellent. All right, so on this one, Leroy asked, just a general question for Yogashri. Any other observations about B factor in her experience, either from an analysis perspective or across reservoirs, which is not spoken or mentioned about?
Other observations that I can mention come from the RTA. And in the RTA, you'll notice,
what's RTA?
Rate transient analysis.
Okay. I'm definitely not on y'all's side of business, so all the three-letter acronyms.
No worries. So for those of you that are in reservoir engineering or that have an interest in reservoir engineering, rate transient analysis has a series of diagnostic plots that can help you identify flow regimes in how the well is performing. And you're basically marrying completions and reservoir engineering from these diagnostic plots of pressure and in production. In these diagnostic plots, you'll notice that you'll start with a bilinear flow, which is flow that's perpendicular to the fracture flow. And then you have linear flow, which is flow that's parallel to the fracture flow. And then you have boundary dominated flow, where the pressure transients have reached the boundary and now you're essentially producing from the rest of the well, but you're in like in a pseudo steady state form. So the B factor changes from each of those flow regimes. It's greater than 1 in a bilinear flow. It's a little greater than 1 in a linear flow. And it reaches about 1 or less than 1 in a boundary dominated flow. So from your rate transient analysis, you can identify when those B factors are declining. And across reservoirs, you just look at your production performance and you can perform a multi-segment decline curve analysis, or DCA, to identify what are those B factors from an empirical standpoint. So I gave you two methods. I gave you what the technical standpoint is, or what the analytical standpoint is, and then I gave you what the empirical standpoint is for identifying those B factor differences.
There we go. All right, guys, if y'all got any more questions, be sure to throw them out. We've got one more here. Yogashri, do you consider the role of geomechanics when approaching unconventionals?
Absolutely. There's been a lot of advent. There's been an advancement in reservoir simulation, for example, and in completions engineering. So from a field application standpoint and from a simulation standpoint on geomechanics applications. In reservoir simulation, you're combining compaction tables, or you're combining injection of how exactly you're injecting in your wells, or what exactly your completion job is, to quantify your stimulated rock volume, or your SRV. In a completion standpoint, you're monitoring pressures. You're monitoring your treatment pressures and identifying where stress shadowing is happening, or the influence of your stress regime changes because of what you pumped in a previous stage, or what you've pumped in previous stages. That's the best way to describe what stress shadowing is. So you definitely need to take into account the geomechanics in unconventional reservoir engineering and identifying your well performance. Because when you're looking at your geomechanics, for instance, you also need to look at your stress regimes and what's the general trends of your stress regimes in the respective basins that you're in. In the Midland Basin, SH max, or horizontal maximum stress, and SH min, horizontal minimum stress, are really close. So during your completions, for instance, your SH max, your SH min may change directions. And you also need to take that into consideration whenever you're going to look at some well-to-well communication, or whenever you're trying to look at the orientation on how you can best produce from your wells.
I know we had the question in here earlier, but I don't see it right now. And it asked, do you believe there will be petroleum engineers in 2040? So essentially 19 years from now, will there still be petroleum engineers?
I believe there will be petroleum engineers in the year of 2040. One, because I need a job. Just kidding.
So here's a unique question. As a commercial driver in the field, what can I do better when reporting from bottom to provide consolidated objective information to the engineers? What could I be doing more efficiently as the eyes?
Okay, so what can I do better when reporting? So information. Okay. The best, well, I'm a person who likes to read spreadsheets. So or looking at real-time data. So if there's a platform that you have to look at real-time data, then I would suggest that you can definitely provide those views or those visualizations to engineers. Consolidated numbers and finding the underlying value of those numbers are definitely the love languages of engineers, I would say. So I would say those consolidated spreadsheets and visualizations of real-time data platforms.
So Corey asked a question, how do you find the quality of those data inputs? I think he was in regards to the geomechanics. So it's kind of a follow-up question to there.
That's a really good question, and this is something that we're still trying to figure out. I would suggest that you need to have a really good stress log. I would also suggest that you need to have some good seismic as well. And you need to, and just we're leaning on your subject matter expertise of your stress logs and in your seismic data to truly understand to truly understand the geomechanics. I would also say looking at the quality of your logs, so getting in touch with your petrophysicist and getting in touch with your geologist, for example, are what I would say to understand the quality of those inputs, and making sure the processing of those unconventional logs are suited to unconventionals as opposed to using a conventional methodology.
He said, yes, in regards to stress management, measurements and rock properties. So yeah, I think we covered that one. Yeah. All right. Well, guys, thank y'all so much for everybody for being here and asking questions. I've got one final question for you, actually two, but the first one first is you got to tell me about having your wedding in front of a pump jack. How did you arrange that? And did you have to, was that your idea or your significant other's idea? And how did that go over when you told your family?
That's a really good question. My family knew that I wanted a small wedding, and they were okay with that because of COVID. We just wanted a small wedding, COVID or not. And it was actually my significant other's idea to get married at a lease, because we thought we were going to get married at City Hall. We thought we'd just go ahead and do a City Hall wedding and get it over with. And then he brought up, well, this industry has brought both of us together. We met in Midland, and we both love this industry. So why not get married at a lease? I thought this idea was so crazy. It was crazy enough to work. I disagreed with him. I disagreed with him at first because I didn't think either of the companies that we work for will approve of this idea. But I took a shot. I wrote a letter to our sole proprietor of our company, and I asked, okay, well, I want to get married. We want to get married, and we want to get married at this particular well site. And we were curious to know that if it was okay for us to, would you accept the fact that we get married at this well site? He responded back very favorably and started mentioning the history of the well. and yeah, all I did was just ask, and you never know what answer you're going to get. Ask and you shall receive. So that's pretty much what we did.
Well, same thing for me. I just reached out to you and asked if you wanted to be a part of the show, and sure enough, here we are today. So it's awesome to hear that, and I hope that somewhere in the documentation of that well there's a little side note that, Yogashri and husband got married here, so that everybody knows that's part of the history of that well, and it goes down in the digital assets or wherever that gets stored away. Whether online or in a filing cabinet somewhere, so that everybody can know about it for years to come. Finally, I know that you have an absolutely amazing YouTube. Tell us a little bit about some of your stuff on social media. What can we learn from some of the stuff that you're putting out? And then what are the best ways to be able to get in contact with you if they want to continue learning more?
Sure. My YouTube channel is mostly focused on oil and gas content, technical content, and professional development topics. So I could help you with both aspects. So my YouTube channel is supposed to help on both aspects of how to even survive in this industry, really, and how to get yourself involved in this industry, and how to not just survive but also thrive. So the most of my content is mostly focused on that. And the things that I post on social media are going to be events that are local to the Permian Basin or the news in oil and gas. But most of the things that I do post on my social media are my content from my YouTube channel. And I post some of the things that I'm up to on my social media, or that I'm up to related to oil and gas, for example, my Facebook and my LinkedIn and my Instagram. But I would say the best way to get a hold of me is through my LinkedIn, and definitely my LinkedIn and my Instagram, and and my YouTube channel as well.
And so what's your YouTube channel called? What's the channel name?
Oh, the channel name is my name, Yogashri Pradhan.
Okay, there we go. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today and being a part of the show. I know I learned a lot because first of all, I don't know anything about reservoir engineering other than what you and Todd Brooker have said. Like it would be a goose egg. It would just be a zero. So thank you for you definitely coming on and educating us on this stuff. And hopefully for all the students out there, young people in the engineer, or anybody who's looking to be able to cross over to reservoir engineering within their current role, has now got a little bit better idea of what it takes to actually be able to move forward. And a lot of the things we talked about today are not just consistent with reservoir engineering, but also, you know, the data management stuff that goes across the board in any part of the industry. Learning how to be able to handle massive amounts of data and be able to actually do something with it, turn around, make decisions off of it is really, really important. Something to definitely be able to look into. Any last words from you, Yogashri?
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to many other episodes that you're going to have in the following weeks.
So next episode, Joe Sinat is going to be on next week. The week after that, we've got a surprise special guest that I'm not going to tell anybody yet. We're going to wait till the week of. It's going to be a huge surprise. What? And then the week after that, I don't have anything planned yet, but we are going to, for anybody that was watching last week, we did the very first Plug and Abandon show. It wasn't about plug and abandonment. It was just come on the show, plug your company, and then abandon the show, just get off. So you had like 4 minutes. Come on, talk about your company. I got an absolutely ton of positive feedback about that from last week. So if you guys haven't watched that one, go back and watch it. It was really, really, really cool. A lot of really cool companies, really, really quick pitches, just saying who they are, what they do. I had tons of people telling me that, you know, they saw 5 new companies that they'd never heard of, and that, you know, they were writing down their contact information and going to be reaching out to them. So if you guys were a part of last week's show, reach out to me, let me know what the feedback was from last week. So I'll definitely be doing that one again in the future. And then, you know, next week I'll definitely be back in the studio and vacation will be over. So for everybody out there watching, thank you guys so much for being here. Please like, share, subscribe, do all those social media things. And until next time, see if I can find this and make sure I get it done right. Close for live. That's the button I click. As always, guys, know your industry.